Vandy must stay on schedule on offense in order to snap the 15-game losing streak to South Carolina.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Now, as Vandy looks to snap this 15-game losing streak to South Carolina, stopping the run will be a must defensively. However, if they want a chance to snap the streak, they must stay on schedule offensively. I think that's the most important thing here. And why do they need to stay on schedule? Because there's two guys that if you get behind the sticks and you get in third and long, Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. Those are two names that will give nightmares to offensive coordinators. They have given nightmares to offensive coordinators on their schedule previously. Just ask Kalen DeBoer, just ask Jalen Milroe, just ask Marcel Reed and Colin Klein in Texas A&M. They were the latest victim of this Kyle Kennard, Dylan Stewart assault on the quarterback. Kyle Kennard has 8.5 sacks on the season, 12 tackles for loss, and Dylan Stewart has 5.5 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss. They're both projected early round picks in the NFL draft. So it is important to stay on schedule. And even Clark Lee said as much himself. He said, quote, "We got to find creative ways to make space. If you're inefficient on early downs, which got us against Auburn, you're going to have to deal with that edge pressure on third and long." And those aforementioned defensive ends and edge guys that I just said are going to wreak havoc. Okay. And so got to find creative ways to make space. Let's break that part of the quote down. Okay. So creative ways to make space. Okay. They've been creative all season long, but now they're going to have to find ways to be able to get the ball out on the edge more efficiently, more effectively, maybe screens in some situations, not obvious screen situations like third and long, because they will sniff that out. Maybe try to get the ball out on the edge quick, maybe some more RPOs where Diego Pavia is running out there and throwing the bubble on the run, forcing those guys to run laterally. Maybe, the ball travels faster than the person. So, excuse me, maybe they can't get out there fast enough. Having some real deal RPOs, some second level RPOs with slants, stick routes, hitches, things like that, to where, these defenders commit to the run, they leave space behind them, and then Vandy can create space that way. It keeps them from it forces them to be a step slow. And so that is one way they can do it to create some space. So they've got to find creative ways to do that. Formationally, they can do that. They can get in some unbalanced looks, force them to play those looks. That's one way of doing it. And just really kind of try, and honestly, I know this is weird to say, but like just force feeding the inside run, like just pounding the inside run, because what Vandy did against Auburn is they wore them down with the inside run. They have some backs now. They have Monty Jones, they have Chase Gillespie, they have Newberry. Cedric Alexander's banged up, but he can be effective, here and there in spots. I think they played him on a pitch count against Auburn because he was banged up so bad. They played him early on to kind of establish him. He didn't get a whole lot of run in the middle, and then in the fourth quarter he came back and was kind of a integral part of that stretch run there, that death march that they had. But they're just going to have to find ways to just attack the center of the defense. They're going to have to put those. They're going to have to put Kennard and Stewart in conflict and just force them to be wrong. Otherwise, those guys can also erase some of the mistakes. They can make the wrong read and make up for it and make the play and recover. So that's kind of scary if you think about it. But they just got to, they got to take some shots downfield. I've said this all along. I've said this last 3 weeks since the Texas game. Teams are going to start figuring out where this Vandy offense wants to attack. Like there's only so much they can do formationally and motion wise, things like that, to create a little bit of deception. At some point, teams are like, they're going to attack here and here and here and here. We're going to stop those 4 places. We're going to force you to attack us here and here. And you can't do that. And we're going to bank on that. And so far, Vandy has found ways to get around that, but that's only going to last so long as well. Because South Carolina is good on defense. Auburn just about had them there. They just couldn't finish, right? So it's going to be up to South Carolina to kind of finish that a little bit and say, okay, well, we're going to force you to beat us here. You can't do it. We're going to make sure that you can't do it. And we're going to make sure that you really can't beat us with your identity. So Vandy's got to kind of blend those two concepts together. Obviously they're going to have to get outside of their comfort zone a little bit. And create something in the passing game, but they're also going to have to hit on their identity, because they're going to, at some point, they're going to have to move the sticks. They're going to have to get first downs. They're going to have to play field position. They're going to have to possess the ball. So they've just got to get ways to do it. I mean, sprint out quick game is also good. 1, 2, 3 dash one way or the other and just fire like a speed out to Junior Sherrill or Quincy Skinner. That's effective. The slant routes have been good. The crossing routes have been okay. They've been hit or miss, but Pavia, I think, sometimes is a little bit inaccurate when somebody's crossing the field, especially when they're crossing into his arm. Sometimes I think he throws it behind him when he's crossing into his arm instead of away from his arm. So like if they're going right to left, he's a little bit better at hitting them because he can kind of lead them a little bit. But if they're going left to right, it comes right into his arm. And sometimes the angle of that release can get funky. I've thrown slant routes at practice before as a coach, and when they're coming into my arm, it's better. When they're breaking away from my arm, sometimes I struggle. And it's kind of counteractive, but as a lefty, I'm just a weird lefty, you know what I mean? But so there's like, the point being is this: first down screens are always effective. Toss sweeps, some quarterback runs, some designed quarterback runs where you got extra blockers in there where it's not really an option. It's just, hey, we're going to, there was a G lead they did against, I believe it was Alabama. They did a G lead where they had a tight end. They had a 3-man surface to the boundary, and they had trips to the field. And they lined the back. They moved Alexander over. They jumped him over right before the snap, and the left guard pulled. So the play side guard pulled and kicked, and the back led, and they got everybody kind of covered up. And then Alexander just cleared the path, and Pavia had a big gain on that. Like doing stuff like that just to get some yards. Like they just need 8 to 10 yards. On that play. I mean, they need 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8 yards, and they just keep hitting those. And even the ones that go for 2 or 3, they just need to keep hitting those, because eventually those will break out as well. So I'm pretty pumped to see what the game plan is actually like, because I think Vandy does a good job of adjusting. They did a great job of adjusting in the second half because Auburn was shutting them down on a lot of the stuff that they really like to do. So they found things off of that. Like the sprint draw has been really good because Vandy really loves to push the pocket. So the sprint draw counter was really good, where the back would go opposite of the sprint. I think a sprint throwback screen would be good. There's some trick plays that there's a trick play against Texas that thought they were going to hit, but they called it back. So that was not fun. But they have some wrinkles up their sleeve with that kind of stuff. Maybe find a way to incorporate Nate Johnson into the scheme and do some sort of 2 quarterback in the game at the same time type stuff. Do some quick passing game stuff, take a few shots, find out who can do some things, right? Find out which receivers can stretch the field. Find out who can make that play, who can make that contested catch at the back pylon, right? Can Quincy Skinner go up and get it? He's done it before. Can he do it again, right? run those jet sweeps, right? Run the jet read, run the jet play action. Like those things can really, really be effective. Like run the jet, because they run the jet where the tight end runs that delayed seam. Well, maybe have him instead of run the seam, run the corner, because they're going to jump on that seam. They're going to crush the middle of the field there when they see the tight end release. Maybe have them break out towards the flag, because those corners and those edge guys are coming down on the jet. They have to respect the jet. You throw that corner in behind it, you might have something, and it's just kind of like it's like a quick corner. It's not a full 10-yard corner. It's kind of more of like a 5-yard flag route that just kind of enough of a vertical stem to really hold that safety to think he's going to run the seam, and he breaks it back out to the flag, and just quarterback fakes it, steps back, quick 1-2. Lays it out to him. I think those are some creative ways, but they have to be on schedule. They cannot get in third and long. That's the whole point of this. Kennard and Stewart will raise hell. It'll be another banner day for those two if Vandy's in third and long constantly, which could happen. So that's the important part. One last time. Here's the quote. Got to find ways to create space. Got to find creative ways to create space. If you're inefficient on early downs, which got us against Auburn, you're going to have to deal with the edge pressure on third and long. Those guys will feast, I promise. So, but the defense got its hands full too. I'll tell you how, tell you why next. All right, guys. Sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims provides access to treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you the boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and get their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. So just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds and thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required prices vary based on product and subscription plan. All right, welcome back. Thank you for making Locked On Vandy your first listen today. If you need a second listen, Locked On SEC is the place to go, especially on Thursdays when we squad up on the Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches when covering the best conference in college football. And the squad, I don't need to say any more about the squad. It's a riot, dude. It's amazing. You should if you're missing it, you're missing it. So that's how it is. So find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. So I said that Vandy's defense is going to have their hands full. They are. Okay. But this South Carolina team is, when it comes to offense, it's been a little bit of a mystery bag, so to speak. Now lately they've been playing extremely well. Lenore Sellers, I think, is finding his groove. But I still think it's a little bit of a mixed bag. And, I think, and there was a comment on one of my YouTube on yesterday's episode that I want to talk about real quick before I get into that, though. There was some sentiment that Shane Beamer could be on the hot seat because the teams are underperforming. And when they came out, there was that sentiment, but that sentiment's probably since gone. So I don't know if I expressed that the right way, but the sentiment, I think, is pretty much gone now. I think he's pretty secure at this point. That's no longer a thing, but it was My point was that it started there, and now he's figured out some things. That was kind of my point. I don't know if I had conveyed that properly or effectively, but that was my point in that. But anyway, the key to South Carolina's offense is to stop the run. Lenore Sellers, great runner, still, like I said, still developing as a passer, a very good passer. Like Diego Pavia, an effective passer, an effective enough passer, but a great elite runner. Okay. I feel like outside of the physical differences, I think Pavia and Lenore Sellers are very, very similar in the way they play football. Both extremely competitive, both just gamers. They both are playmakers. They whatever the play that needs to be made, they make it. They've struggled at times. Obviously, I don't think either one of them can process a full field concept right now. They can't make a 5-step drop and go, okay, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and make a decision. I don't think they're those type of quarterbacks, which is okay. Lenore Sellers, Pavia's at the end of his line in college, so he's probably not ever going to turn into that. Lenore Sellers still does have a chance at becoming a better quarterback. So it's one of those situations where like these two when I look at these two teams, they're very similar. I think when you look at it, you have Miles Capers and Kennard. And then, South Carolina has the edge because they have Stewart. But DeCosmo is serviceable. He's good. He's not Matthews. He's not Stewart. He's not Dylan Stewart. But I think they both have really good edge guys. I think both have really good defensive lines. I like Corday Sidnor on Vandy's defensive line, so I think they're built pretty equally there. I think the linebacking cores, the inside backers, I think Vandy might have an advantage there, and the defensive backfields I think are pretty similar. So offensively, both teams are centered around the run. Cedric Alexander, Rocket Sanders, they're different style runners, but they're both effective. I think Vandy probably has a little more depth there. I think AJ Newberry is a super talented back that can make some things happen, and he's versatile, which is what I like about him. He's versatile. He can give some things in the passing game, and he can provide a serviceable weapon for Diego Pavia. So when you look at these teams, they're really built similarly. So how you play Vandy's offense is a lot how you play South Carolina's offense, right? The only thing I would give Vandy the edge over as far as the way the offenses are built, obviously the scheme I think gives Vandy a little bit of advantage because they lean fully into the option scheme, and they have Jerry Kill and Tim Beck, which Jerry Kill, I have the utmost respect for him. I had the utmost respect for him before I even thought about covering Vandy. I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he was phenomenal all the way back to when he was at Minnesota when I first heard about him. He's an amazing coach. He's a great program builder. If not for health issues, he would be leading his own Power 5 program. He would probably be in the conversation for the college football playoff. He's that good. So that's an advantage that Vandy does have. But for South Carolina's offense, I think they're still trying to find their way. I don't know. I think a lot of their early struggles were, and I think it's not all on the offensive line because I do think they have some talented guys there, but I think struggling to find an identity didn't help those guys at all. And now they've kind of leaned into, okay, well, we can run the ball a little bit. We've got Rocket Sanders. We've got Lenore Sellers who can go. So we're going to start to I think they're starting to find that a little bit. I don't know if they fully found it yet. I think it's too early for that. But for Vandy, I think they're used to, if a team has a known identity, I think Clark Lee's a good enough play caller to be able to stop that. And for South Carolina, you have to collapse the pocket from the inside, force Sellers, if he's going to scramble in the passing game, to run the loop to try to get out on the edge. And I think if he does that, this defense is finally fast enough to not let him do that. I can't say the same about Vandy's defense in years past, but this year they're finally able to control that a little bit. As far as the run game, the quarterback run game again, just close up the gaps, clog up the interior stuff, and force them to bounce it. Don't let them, and then force them to run laterally as much as you can offensively. And if you can do that, I think pursuit is good enough. I think they're fundamentally sound enough now. I think they're finally at a point where they're tackling well enough in space to not let all these huge plays happen like they have. I think since the Texas game, they've really kind of focused on that. The screen game, stuff like that. When a ball, like if you get, South Carolina, I think they're still also trying to figure out how to get their receivers in space. And Vandy's just got to tackle. They've got to tackle in space. They've got to swarm to the ball, and they can't let Sanders or Sellers get momentum. They can't let Sellers step up in the pocket and take off. They can't let him get the edge easily. They have to make him run sideways to be able to try to get the edge. And if he still gets the edge, then you got to tip your cap to him, right? But they've got to force him to earn that. And of course, as always, that is going to in turn force South Carolina to earn their drives. And when I say earn their drives, means snap the ball. And Lenore Sellers is still young enough to where if you get him to snap the ball enough times, he could make a crucial mistake somewhere. Just young quarterbacks are prone to that. I mean, hell, Carson Beck is a fifth-year senior, and he's throwing picks left and right. I'm not saying Sellers is anywhere in the ballpark of Carson Beck. They're not even close to the same style of quarterback, and I think Sellers actually might be a little bit better at this point. But it's it's one of those type of things where, like, I'm just saying, like, young quarterbacks aren't, like, even old quarterbacks, veteran quarterbacks aren't immune to being rattled, right? So Vandy's got to find a way to rattle him. They got to figure out how Lenore Sellers can get rattled and frustrating him in the run game by stuffing the run and forcing them to get first down, to get yard by yard, literally move the ball down the field. So that's going to be something that you look at and say, okay, well, this is going to be the key. If Vandy can outrush South Carolina, they have a chance. And that's where their chance lies. So, but the last step is the mindset, because there's a certain psychological advantage that South Carolina still has, which is the reason why they have a 15-game streak going against Vandy. We'll tell you what that mindset is. How do you beat that mindset? It's crazy. They beat it against Alabama earlier in the year. They got to beat it again against South Carolina. We'll talk about it next. ZBiotics. That's right. It's a pre-alcohol probiotic drink that's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. I could have used that in college. I really could have. I wish I would have invented it. Here's how it works. When you drink alcohol by PhD scientists, it gets converted to a toxic byproduct in the gut. It is this byproduct, not dehydration, that is to blame for your rough next day. This could have been useful when I was in college, like I said. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme, break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink and drink responsibly. You'll feel your best tomorrow. So every time I drink, I notice it the next day, and I conveniently plan. I have that ZBiotics drink right there right before I go out. I pound one right before I go out, right? And so I was on the fence about it, but I gave it a try. I went to this Halloween party and I drank it. This was recently, and it worked, man. It worked. I was able to drink my bourbon gingers, and I was able to knock them back, and I felt no ill effects. So, like I said, I drank the pre-alcohol. It was my first drink. That's good. That's for the best results. I paced myself, so I didn't pound like 15 of those. I paced myself, and then I woke up refreshed. So here's what you do to make for you to feel like I felt on that next morning. Go to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnCollege at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. That's pretty good. So remember to head to ZBiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. All right, we are wrapping up here on the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Real quick, at Locked On Vandy on all social media platforms. If you want to find us, like, subscribe, rate, review, all that stuff. I love the feedback that I'm getting, even the trash talk from you South Carolina people. I love it. Keep it coming. All right, got a little injury update. Bradley Mann tore his ACL against Auburn. He's out for the season. That's a huge blow. He was having a really good season. On the interior of the defensive line for us. He was a good rotational guy, good energy guy, as you can tell from this picture right here. So he's out for the season, tore his ACL. So we wish Bradley a speedy recovery. He was a really good part of this defense. He will be missed on the interior of the defense. So let's talk a little psychology. Ready? You guys ready for a little psychology lesson? I know I am. So here's what's happening. Okay. You got a 15-game losing streak going on, okay? And it's real easy in that 15-game losing streak that if something happens, right? Let's say Vandy defers, South Carolina gets the ball first, and they roll down the field and score, okay? Let's just say that happens, okay? Now, when you're in the midst of a 15-game losing streak, going down 7-0 is not a big deal in any other situation. They went down 7-0 against Texas. Actually, they went up 7-0 against Texas. But you go down 7-0, it's no big deal, right? It's just one score. So when you have this losing streak, it eats at you because you're like, you start overanalyzing things. You start thinking, oh, crap, here we go again. And then you start pressing. You start trying to make big play after big play after big play, and then you make it worse, right? In 2020, Stetson Bennett was a big culprit of this. He would try to win the game with every throw. I think, against Alabama, he threw like 3 interceptions in the SEC championship. I was watching that game. Did the same against LSU, and it just pressed, right? Because like they had the pressure of like their own losing streak against Alabama. There was some pressure there. So when you try to make plays, when you try to overcome some of this stuff, and when you try too hard to overcome some of this stuff, it doesn't usually go well. Doesn't usually go in your favor. Okay, so with the 15-game losing streak, you have to just relax, put it out of your mind. I know that's easier said than done, but the key to this, snapping this, is to just kind of get over the fact that, hey, okay, we're going to get it back on this play. And if you keep things, and I think their mindset has been a lot better with this, but I think if you keep things to singular plays, treat every play as if it had its own lifespan, that helps, because like you get so wrapped up in those singular battles that all of a sudden at the end of the game, you're like, okay, well, I've won most of my battles. And so look at the scoreboard, next thing you know, it's like you're ahead. So it's one of those things where you can't pay attention to the scoreboard. You just got to play. You just got to go out and play. And Vandy's done a really good job of doing that all season long. They just go out and play. And they go out and have fun. They go out and play. And they don't worry about all the other stuff. They don't worry about all the peripheral stuff. I haven't seen this team get rattled yet. I just haven't seen them. I haven't seen them get rattled. I haven't seen them reel. Like last year, yeah, they might play you tough at the first quarter, but then the dam was going to break. They were going to start reeling, and it was going to be over quickly. At those moments this year, like there was a moment against Virginia Tech where in the very first game where I was like, okay, now Virginia Tech's going to turn it on. Here we go. Okay, that was fun. They're playing them tough. It was respectable, but okay, here we go. But Vandy started clicking again. It's just like they just kind of deep breath, reset, go, right? And so it's just that was good to see. And then they did against Alabama. They almost pulled it off against Missouri. I think against Georgia State, they were just apathetic. They just didn't really care to be there. I think that's just kind of an outlier game I've never seen. That's the only game I've ever seen them play like that. But the other games have been kind of resilient. So that was a lot of fun. But anyway, mindset is very, very important. I'll talk more about that on later episodes. But Before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the basketball team. They started off their season with a 102-63 win over Maryland Eastern Shore. Mark Byington and his full roster of point guards. I think the point guard was the best position on the court for Mark Byington. I mean, I think every single one of his point guards did really, really well. And he, McLaughlin was really good. He had 24 points and 13 rebounds and blocking 2 shots. So, when you have a point guard that's a shot blocker, I mean, that's awesome. You had Carey, you had Jalen Carey, 6'9", he's a really big point guard. But he ran the break pretty good. He had a double-double, 13 points, 10 rebounds. And then, it's I love this is all point guards, right? This team's going to be special, man. In all seriousness, this team's going to be really, really fun to watch. And, I think it's going to be, you're going to enjoy this and you're going to say, okay, well, we've found something with basketball, and this is going to be a good run there for Mark Byington. I think you're going to see that was the right move. And basketball season, that's just game one. It's a long season. We'll be more into hoops as we go, but I just thought I would throw out there because I wanted to make a reference to the point guards because everybody's a point guard. But anyway, that's all I got. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And behave yourselves, anchor down. We'll see you back here next time. Peace.